Welcome to another episode of Unscripted. I'm your host, Kelly Cardenas. On today's episode, it's going to be a tough one for me to keep a smile on my face because we're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to my family. I'm not super excited about it, but it is something that's a reality, and it's a reality in so many people's life. Here it is, the dimmer switch of addiction. Whether that be to alcohol, drugs, to sex, to whatever it is, the dimmer switch of addiction doesn't come on in a second. It turns off little by little by little by little, and then you don't realize, but you're in the dark. It doesn't just overcome you. And I've noticed this in my family over time, but Proverbs 23 is unbelievable as we unpack it. So we're taking the corresponding proverb, the corresponding day, and taking you right down this lane. We're going to deal with fame, money, untruth, knowledge, discipline, wisdom, and guarding your heart. Do me the favor. I haven't been saying this, but make sure that you comment. If you comment on the podcast, it helps me out. Comment if you're on YouTube, you're listening on Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. Drop a comment, drop a question, drop a prayer request. Subscribe, hit the notification so then that way you know when the new Unscripted is coming on. And finally, listen and watch to the end because honestly, there is so much power in this. Why Proverbs? Because we do the corresponding proverb, the corresponding day, 3,000-year-old wisdom that is applicable today in your leadership, your culture, and your systems. And my pops used to tell me, just feed on the word. Just feed on the word and you'll gain an appetite for it. Read it first and it'll start to read you. Welcome again to another episode of Unscripted. Let's get this party started.
Cause we believing it's for certain. We put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting right before your eyes. So it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves but can't walk in my shoes.
Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted. I'm your host, Kelly Cardenas. And this morning when I was walking the dog, I got up about 5:30 and I was walking the dog and I started to listen to this proverb, to Proverbs 23. My birthday is the May 23rd, so 23 is a very special day to me. I started thinking about all the positive things that were coming. I wanted to laugh, have a good time, and I wanted to twist this or shift this. And what God kept on me about is there's a way to be able to be joyful in all things. And I was talking with him and I was like, how can I be joyful about what you're telling me here as far as addiction? And he said that it's about falling in love with your current circumstances. See, there was addiction throughout my life, throughout my family's life, and seeing it and realizing that it didn't make me different. I found that it made me normal. And throughout my entire life, I dealt with this, whether it be my aunts, my uncles, my mom, my dad, all those things. I saw this stuff. I saw alcoholism. I saw drug abuse. I saw, all these things. But it's amazing because in Proverbs 23, it gives us a blueprint on how to circumvent it, how to be able to look right at it, to see the things before they come, and to be aware of them. So that's what we're going to be going through today. First is fame, money, untruth, then goes to knowledge, discipline, wisdom, and finally to guard your heart. So in Proverbs 23, the first point is comparison, and this is in verse 1 through 3. And this is nuts because this, again, is how the addiction starts, right? So it starts with comparison. In verse 1 through 3, it says, when you sit to dine with a ruler, note well what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are given to gluttony, do not crave his delicacies, for the food is deceptive. Now, when I read that the first time, I remember thinking, like, how does that apply to me today? I'm not sitting with a ruler. Am I going to really put a knife to my throat? Gluttony is another word that's in there. Don't crave his delicacies, and his food is deceptive. But what I realized was when you sit with someone who maybe has more than you, then you start to compare your life to the others. And this is a precursor to social media. Imagine 3,000-year-old wisdom that we're reading in Proverbs already was a precursor for all the things that are happening on social media today. I watch everybody's highlights, then I look at it and I say, man, I compare myself to it and I want to eat what they're eating, but you have no idea what the process was. You're just looking at the result. So in this comparison, it's wild because it just kind of draws us in a little bit, Hey, start comparing, little bit by little bit by little bit. Then it starts to get large. I fall victim to this all the time. Point number 2 is you could do anything that you put your mind to. That's what my mama said. But she also said, just because you could do it doesn't make it your purpose. So I put in this, you could do anything, but why? And in verse 4 through 5, it hits this pretty hard. It says, do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone. For they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. When I think of this literally, when I was a kid and I was reading this, I was like, is money really going to sprout wings? Well, as you get older, you realize, and my wife and I were just talking about this yesterday, a lot of times what happens is when you're focused on the money or you're focused on the reward, what'll happen is you'll get close to it and then it just goes away. If you think you got enough money, then this hits and that hits and this hits, and then it starts to move along. And when we look at this and say, like, it's not about the result, it's about why you're doing it. In my men's group, which we have today at 7:30 to 8:30, every single Tuesday in Carlsbad, and you're invited if you're close, or even if you want to drive in for it or fly in for it. But I remember talking to one of my friends about a business deal that I had, and he said, but why are you doing it? And when we locked in, we got down to the why, I got a chance to be able to go into business with my brother. And that was the whole reason for it. Your reason why doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It just has to be signature to who you are. Point number 3, physical food and spiritual hunger. You see, spiritual hunger can never be sufficed by physical food. And this is what we try and do as human beings. In verse 6 through 8, it says, don't eat the food of a begrudging host. Do not crave his delicacies. For he is the kind of person who is always thinking about the cost. Eat and drink, he says to you, but in his heart is not with you. You will vomit up the little you have eaten, and you will have wasted your compliments. Eating from a begrudging host, a person who just wants something from you. I said it the other day, and I don't know that this is true, but you can explore this. This thought came into my mind most of the time when someone is trying to get you to do something for their benefit. Most of the time, it's not going to turn out well. Think about the people who are just contributing to you at the highest level. But physical food will never suffice spiritual hunger. Number 4, association. So in association, as we go down this line, again, a dimmer switch into addiction, right? So when it starts off, think about it. We start to compare ourselves. We think, oh, I could do anything. Then we start to look at, wow, this physical food, I got this spiritual hunger, but I just need to suffice it. I need to suffice it with the things of the world or the things that make me feel good right now and that are shiny. And then it goes down to association. Association is in verse 9. And so in verse 9, it says, do not speak with fools, for they will scorn your prudent words. Association. We hear this all the time. You're the sum of the 5 people that you're closest to. Be careful of your friends. Show me your friends. I'll show you your future. All these things. But it says it right here, 3,000-year-old wisdom in Proverbs. Number 5, respect those who have come before you. And that's in verse 10 and verse 11. Do not move an ancient boundary stone or encroach on the fields of the fatherless, for their defender is strong and he will take up their case against you. just respect those who come before you. Read, understand history, understand where things come from. That's why we're reading 3,000-year-old wisdom in Proverbs that'll help you with your leadership, your culture, and your systems. Why not just go to the foundation? And think about these things in a company. Think about these things in a relationship. And it's not just about addiction to a substance, but it's about looking at things in a little bit different perspective. Here we go. Point number 6 is add action. Add action to things, and that is in verse 12. It says, apply your heart to instruction and your ears to the words of knowledge. It's just not about taking in instruction in your heart or hearing the words of knowledge, but applying it. My friend Greg Reed says it all the time. It's the action in the law of attraction that actually makes things work. You have to apply these principles every single day. And this was a way out. So you saw the dimmer switch start to go, right? So when we think about the dimmer switch of addiction, the comparison, it brings in fame and money, and then brings you untruth because of the physical food that won't suffice spiritual hunger. Then it talks about the association because it'll start to break you down. Respect those who've come before you. So just study them and then add action to the knowledge and to the instruction that you'll get from the word and from wisdom. And where does wisdom come from? From the fear of God. So on point number 7, speak life. Now it starts to pick us up and lift us up and say, these are the ways that you could get out of this addiction. Be careful of it. My son, if your heart is wise, wisdom comes from the fear of God. Fear of God is just the respect of God, and to respect him, you have to know his character. My son, if your heart is wise, then your heart will be glad indeed. My inmost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right. Speak life to people around you. How do you know how to speak life? Because you fill yourself with wisdom. How do I get wisdom? That is the fear of God, or the respect of God. The respect of God will give you wisdom. The wisdom will give you knowledge. Knowledge will give you understanding. Understanding will give you insight. Insight give you discretion. Discretion give you discipline. Discipline give you strength. And the strength will lead you right back to a right relationship or respect of God. So speak life. Point number 8, instruction, insight. Wisdom, instruction, insight from your elders. This is massive because when it says, listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Wisdom, instruction, and insight as well. The father of the righteous child has great joy, and man who fathers a wise son rejoices in him. May your father and mother rejoice. May she who gave you birth be joyful. You see, I thought that every single person had very similar parents that were constantly speaking life. It didn't mean that we weren't perfect. Didn't mean that we were perfect. It meant that we had addiction. We had, fighting in the family, all these things. But what we did have was the prayer and lifting up and love all around us. My mom said that you're awesome, you're beautiful, you could do anything. My pop said, you're the greatest, so act accordingly. And now I have to act according to that greatness and honor who they are and the amazing gifts that they gave me. And point number 9, it says, God wants your heart, so protect your eyes. In verse 26 through 28, my son, give me your heart and let your eyes delight in my ways, for an adulterous woman is a deep pit, and a wayward wife is a narrow well. Like a bandit, she lies in wait and multiplies the unfaithful among men. Guys, God wants your heart, but he also realizes that these eyes are a gateway to our heart. If I see things enough, it'll start to drop down into my heart, and he wants to keep our heart pure. So beware of your eyes. Okay, point number 10, as we finish up today, stay of a sober mind. Stay of a sober mind, but also stay of a sober body. Stay of a sober heart. Anything that gets in between you and your relationship with God just causes us to not be sober. But also, let's talk about the literal sense. Imagine this. Imagine what God said. He said the dimmer switch of addiction, it's comparison. It's helping you to realize that or think that you could do anything. You could do anything, right? It takes you from fame to money to untruth. But then he brings it back and he says that watch out for the association. Respect those who come before you. Add action to my knowledge and my wisdom. Speak life to people. Wisdom and instruction and insight from your elders. God wants your heart, so protect your eyes and stay of a sober mind. From verse 29 through 35, it blows me away because, check this out. It says, who has woe, who has sorrow, who has strife, who has complaints? Imagine when that happens. That's when we start to drink. That's when we start to use drugs because we want to take and mask it. Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup. You see it? When it goes down so smoothly, in the end, it bites like a viper. The poison bites like a snake. The poisons of a viper. Your eyes will see strange sights. I've seen this happen with parties of my friends. And your mind will imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping on the high seas, lying on top of the rigging. They hit me, you say, but I am not hurt. They beat me, but I do not feel it. When will I wake up so I can find another drink? You see, addiction is a liar. Addiction is a liar. I watched this happen so much. If I could just get to my next drink, all these bad things happen, but you know what? Maybe it was just a fantasy, so when I wake up, I can have another one. But beware, guys, of the dimmer switch of addiction, and it'll never come on you in one simple, the lights won't turn out. It'll be a dimmer switch. It'll be little. It'll show you fame. It'll show you money. It'll show you untruth. But what God says is come after my knowledge. Come after my discipline. Come after my wisdom. And at all costs, guard your heart and keep your mind sober. This has been another episode of Proverbs, or Unscripted. And it's Proverbs 23, 3,000-year-old wisdom. And God knew. God knows exactly where you're at right now. He knows exactly where you're at. He wants you to fall into his arms. He loves you more than you can ever imagine. And as my pop said it like this, you're the greatest, so act accordingly. My name is Kelly Cardenas. Thank you so much for tuning in to Unscripted. I have had an incredible time. I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.